Good day, class. Today we're going to discuss a summary of PD 1096 or the National Building Code of the Philippines. Now, I think you have a general idea on how important your knowledge of the building code is, especially in your future practice as architects. Okay, so you really need to study and familiarize yourself to the different provisions of the code because it will help you someday with your clients. Okay, so that's why your clients hire you because future architects or architects, you should have a good understanding of the different codes and regulations which shape up the building industry in the Philippines. Okay, so I think one semester is not enough to discuss all the provisions of PD 1096. Okay, uh, it's very important. PD 1096 is very important for us in our profession in the building industry. Okay, so but what we're going to discuss now is just I'm going to guide you to have bird's eye view or what you call a general understanding of the different provisions stated in the National Building Code. Okay, so let's start with chapter 1. So chapter 1 is about the general provisions where you can find the title, the declaration of policy, the scope and application, general building requirements, site requirements, and the definition. Okay, so if you remember you while reading PD 1096, you can ascertain that the scope of the National Building Code is applicable to everything. So there is no exemption. Not even public entities are exempted from getting a building code before constructing a building. Okay, so the administration and enforcement. So you can find here the responsibility for administration enforcement, the technical staff, the general powers and functions of the secretary under this rule, the professional technical assistants, the building officials, the qualifications of building officials, the duties of building officials, the different fees, the use of income from fees, the IRR, the penal provisions, uh, about dangerous and ruinous buildings or structures, and abatement of dangerous buildings or structures, and other remedies. Chapter 3 is about permits and inspection. So it's about building permits, application for permits, processing of permits, issuance of building permits, validity of building permits, non-issuance, suspension, or revocation of building permits, appeal, inspection, supervision of work, certificate of occupancy. Chapter 3 is important for you to familiarize class because if you for example, if you engage in design build services, of course your clients are going to ask you whether or not to secure a building permit. So as the architect, you must educate the client that before constructing or doing the project, you must first secure a permit. Okay, so in the reality of the construction industry in the Philippines is that there are a lot of practices wherein the building is constructed without permits. So what happens, class, if you construct a building or structure without a building permit? First is that you fail to redefine the lot boundaries. So how is it dangerous and costly for the client? If uh, if you fail to properly determine the property line uh, of the building, then there might be encroachment happening towards the adjacent property, which could be uh, which could cost your client a lot, and it might lead to litigation or disputes. Okay, that is why before you construct your uh, projects or buildings, you must first secure a permit so that you can get a geodetic engineer to check what is written in the title. Okay? Chapter 4 is about the types of construction, changes in types, and requirements on types of construction. Chapter 5, requirements for fire zones. So here, the fire zones are defined. The buildings located in more than one fire zone, moved building, temporary building, center lines of streets, restrictions on existing buildings, and designation of fire zones. Okay? But if you want, there's something stated in chapter 5 class stating the definition of what adjoining property line is, but you should think of it in the context that this only for the purpose of defining fire zones in chapter 5. Okay? So you define your property line not from the center line of streets but from the title. Okay? So the technical description stated in the title is the legal document, okay, which will describe the boundaries or limits of the properties of the clients or owners. Okay. Then fire. I think you can see in RA 9514, which is the revised fire code of the Philippines, in detail the different uh, standards to comply with the fire safety protocol. Okay. Then we have chapter 6 about fire resistive requirements in construction. Okay, so you have fire resistive rating defined, fire resistive time period rating, fire resistive standards, and fire resistive regulations. Okay. So one thing, class, is that when you make firewalls, what is the purpose of firewalls? Okay. When you make firewalls, the firewall is important not just to separate the property of your client from the adjoining property, but it also serves as a barrier during fires to delay it to delay the fire from transferring to the other property. Okay. I think that is the essence of including uh, fire resistive requirements in construction in the National Building Code, because most of these minimum requirements, it will be further elaborated when you study the National Fire Code of the Philippines. Chapter 7, the classification and general requirement of all buildings by use or occupancy. So you have there occupancy classified, change in use, mixed occupancy, location and property, allowable floor areas, maximum height of buildings, and then minimum requirements for group dwellings. Okay, so why is it that the maximum height of buildings are stated in this chapter 7? It is especially important if you have a building that is near an airport. Okay, so you have to understand that when a plane is descending from the air, it only has a specific angle for landing. Okay, if your building is too high, then the airplane might hit your building or structure. Okay, but thus there are subdivisions also which impose in the deed of restrictions and the TCT on the maximum height for buildings. For example, houses in the Xavier Estates, they have a limit of 9 meters. Okay? So, private subdivisions, they also impose some maximum height of buildings that so that the rest of the adjoining properties within the subdivision can enjoy the same view and air quality. Okay? Then we have chapter 8, light and ventilation. Here you are going to see the general requirements of light and ventilations, measurement of site occupancy, percentage of site occupancy, size and dimension of courts, ceiling heights, size and dimension of rooms, airspace requirements, window openings, vent shafts, ventilation skylights, artificial ventilation. Okay, so let's have a review. So when you say what is the minimum ceiling height for buildings with natural ventilation, okay, you should have a brief idea of what that minimum is. And how about those provided with artificial ventilation? Okay, and chapter 9 is about sanitation. So it deals with general requirements, the water supply system, wastewater disposal system, storm drainage system, pest and vermin control, noise pollution, and pipe materials. Although sanitation class is discussed more in detail in the sanitation code of the Philippines. Okay? But the National Building Code uh, provides a minimum set of codes also for compliance. So chapter 10, building projection over public streets. So here you can see the requirements if you have a structure that is near, for example, a commercial area, and then or you have a project which has projections over streets. Okay, so you have the general requirements, projection into alleys or streets, projection of balconies and pedages over streets. You have arcades, canopies, movable awnings or hoods, doors, windows, and the like. Then corner buildings with flans. So it is defined in chapter 10. Then chapter 11, the protection of pedestrians during construction or demolition. You have here general requirements again. Storage in public property, mixing mortar on public property, protection of utilities, walkway, pedestrian protection, maintenance and removal of protective devices. So why is it class that in chapter 11, it is discussed here mixing mortar on public property. So what's the implication when you mix concrete on public property? Okay? So sometimes class during the actual construction when you mix your concrete over public property, if it there is no proper protocol in your construction site or team, then the concrete might harden. Okay? It would be an eyesore and it will be very hard to remove. So that is why class it is stated in the National Building Code. Now class, when you define a successful project, it does not only mean that you finish the project on time and on cost uh, and on quality for the client. You have also to make sure that the pedestrians that are passing by, your workers, and the community are protected from the construction debris during the construction of your project. Okay, so that is your responsibility and role as the architect. Let's move to chapter 12. Okay, okay, chapter 12. Okay. So, chapter 12 is about the general design and construction requirements, excavations, veneer, vertical openings, floor construction, roof of construction and covering, stairs, exits and occupant loads, skylights, bays, porches and balconies, chimneys, fire extinguishing systems, stages and platform, motion picture projection rooms, lathing, plastering, and installation. Okay, so what's important to note, I think one of the most important highlights here in chapter 12 are the stairs, exits, and occupant loads. Okay, this is especially important when your occupant load is especially important when you are determining the size of your building or structure. So you can see that the occupant load it's organized as per project type. So familiarize yourselves class with this one, the occupant load, because I think this will be very helpful for you when you do your thesis or when you do your higher higher level designs. Okay? Then you have the electrical and mechanical regulations. You have the electrical regulations and mechanical regulations also discussed in the code. Then you have the photographic and X-ray films, the storage and handling, Classes of films exempted, fire extinguishing system. Then you have prefabricated construction. So when you say prefab glass, so it is something that is done on a different side and assembled on a different property. Okay, so you have your plastics also. You approve plastics, installation, glazing openings, skylights, light transmitting panels and monitors, and sawtooth roofs, plastic light diffusers in ceilings and partitions. Then you have your sheet metal paint spray booths in chapter 17. Okay, so why is there a standard for this one class? Okay, so if you don't apply standards for spraying paint, it could pose a danger to the health of those who are near the spraying process. Then you have chapter 18, glass and glazing. So you can see the general requirements, area limitation, glazing, louvered windows, and the impact. The use of computers, signs, general requirements, maintenance, design, construction, support and anchorages, projection and clearances, lighting. So when you say signs, last these are what you see at the billboards, see the advertisements. So there's also a standard for this one stated in the National Building Code. Okay, then you have the transitory and final provisions, existing building and structures, interim rules and regulations, separability clause, repealing clause, and effectivity. Okay, class. So that's a brief. This is a brief overview of the different chapters contained in your ED 1096 or the National Building Code of the Philippines. Okay, so even if we are about to end our lesson, okay, and then you have a general grasp and understanding of ED 1096 class, um, please continue reading. Okay, as I've said before, this semester is not enough to discuss everything stated in the code. Okay, so this code class, the building, your national building code, is really important in your design. Okay, because as architects, we do not only design in an artistic manner, but also in technicality. Okay, we don't do drawings. We do technical instructions to people on the site. Okay, that is why you have to have a firm grasp and understanding on the different laws and codes in the Philippines.